Agenda.
Move.
Second.
On adoption, all those in favor? Motion's carried. We have meetings of minutes for approval, the March 5th council meeting.
Move.
Second. On approval then, yes, Councilor Fletcher.
And just a note, staff have indicated that my report was amiss and it will be amended to these minutes.
It is already.
Oh, gee, I know, right?
AJ,
Good job. Okay, thank you.
any further?
No.
All those in favor? Motion's carried. Special council meeting minutes, which was for the public hearing of last Wednesday for approval.
Move.
Second.
On approval? Those in favor? Motion's carried. Committee of the whole from last Wednesday, motion to receive the committee of the whole minutes.
Move. Second.
On receipt then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Page 21, we have our management report for receipt.
Move.
Second.
On receipt, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Any issues arising out of that? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Councillor Price,
Yes.
declaring a conflict.
Yes.
All right, so this is the third reading report for the rezoning application, development permit application, development variance permit for 335 Anderson Road. Recommendations from staff are for third reading of both the zoning bylaw and the phased development agreement bylaw. At the outset, I'll just note that council is tasked here obviously with the land use issue as well as forming character around development permit issues. And in terms of some of the comments that we heard last week at the public hearing and previous, there certainly was a lot of reference to infrastructure in the vicinity of that development. So with that in mind, I guess we can open it for discussion or motions as case may be.
I would move the recommendation and add that we would go to on-street parking option B as part of the recommendation.
So you're moving third reading of the zoning bylaw amendment.
Yes. And is it appropriate to do that now, or
Option.
option B, or should we do that later?
It certainly can be moved. CAO, any procedural issues there?
I would do that separately. We'll just give third reading. Let's keep the reading of the bylaws separate from the issue of the infrastructure.
Okay. All right, so move third reading on bylaw, rezoning bylaw, 1767. We can leave the phased development agreement bylaw for consideration shortly. So that's been moved. Has there a seconder for the third reading?
Second.
Thank you. All right, discussion. Councillor Grant, do you want to discuss anything specific to the land use?
No, I'd like to discuss more about the parking and issues which will come up later. I assume that will come up later. So,
On-street parking on
yes,
walls.
and in the report they refer to an option B, which would allow parking on the lower side, or I think it's the south side of the part of the street, on street, and it would also, I believe, allow for parking on the upper side, as long as you weren't on the street, as long as you were on your own property. I believe that's the way I read that.
Yes, Councillor McKenna.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to propose a compromise that's a little different than that, and for council consideration, and I'm wondering if this is the appropriate time to talk about my compromise.
All right. So CAO, how do we deal with that one? I think relates, from what I understand, more to the land use issue, particularly how they impact on the configuration of units and so on.
I'm assuming your proposal, the compromise proposal, would see you voting in opposition then to this motion as it reads, the third reading as it stands?
I think I'd have to do that in order for my compromise to be heard. I'd like my compromise considered, and then I would vote.
Yeah. Okay. So I suspect it would be an amendment, or perhaps defeat of third reading, and then.
That's what would be required in order for something like that to be considered at this stage.
I'll give you the floor and let you talk about what you're proposing here, so you have some idea.
Sure, thanks. And this compromise is in the efforts to focus on the safety concerns brought forward by the traffic safety report and the neighbors at the public hearing. The compromise, I think, addresses both concerns, both the traffic safety concerns on Anderton and on Wallace, but there's going to be some give from all parties here. The concern, or the compromise would suggest that there be a one-way in, one-way out entrance onto Anderton, combined with also an exit onto Wallace. My belief is that this will allow residents from the development to go to Comox and to Courtenay easily, and I believe that this will allow residents to cut down traffic significantly on Wallace, the concerns there. I'd ask council to consider this and wonder what steps the CAO to for this to be considered.
All right, well, we'll certainly entertain further discussion on that. We're talking about third reading, so what you're saying would be against third reading as it stands, so I think that's what the CEO's pointed out. So,
Yeah.
Councillor Grant?
So just looking at this, if you were to do that, I think it would significantly change the development to the point where it would probably have to be redone altogether, which would be a significant cost. And I know that that's not what the neighbors are worried about, but also there is no access onto Anderton Road except right up at the very top corner. So there's a private property owner and we own a piece there. So he has no access to give you there. So I don't see how we could actually do that if he doesn't have the access.
I see it, and my proposal would be at the north end of Anderton,
Right.
just prior to the private property there.
So
Where
you're
it
talking,
would be a one-way in, one-way out, entrance-exit, and yeah, it would. I think it would address the traffic safety concerns, in that people would not be turning left across the traffic, could only turn right, and so that would address that. And I think I'm hopeful that that would take most of the traffic coming out of there rather than going up through Wallace.
You're talking about a right in, right out,
Mm-hmm.
just to be clear. Okay. Anything further on that consideration? Councillor Fletcher?
It's an interesting concept. I had thought of a right out only on the existing punching Wallace all the way through, but so I'm just getting this, so we're going to perhaps move a unit or two down further and allow for an exit up on the northeast corner, and it would be a right in and a right out.
And I think the other part of Councillor McKinnon's proposal is, I don't know how you configure it, but an exit only onto Wallace? You can come in Wallace, is that what you said?
Yes, if you'd be coming from down Anderton, you could turn into the property.
Sorry, but you're talking on Wallace Avenue, there would still be...
There would be an exit there, but
Are you talking about a one-way exit, or are you talking about a full movement there in and out?
I would entertain the planners looking at that and see what they can come up with.
Okay, because I heard you say exit, I didn't hear you say entrance, that's why. All right, Councillor Fletcher, if there's further questions?
No, that's interesting. Thank you.
Councillor Grant?
so I don't see how this changes the traffic safety issue for drivers on Anderton, and I don't see how it changes the traffic safety for the people that would actually live within this complex. I actually see that creating a bigger problem, because you've got Cook Street just up at the top. You would have people coming down past Rob, then you'd have Cook coming out, then you'd have this coming out, then you have Bonavista at the bottom. I think the traffic experts, or the traffic study people that were hired, were very clear that said Anderton is not a road to put traffic out onto. And so I don't see how that changes the safety issue for the public that are driving down Anderton or the people that live in here. I mean, we don't actually get the benefit, like the neighbors do, of looking at this through their eyes of their own little neighborhood. We have to look at this as what's best for the entire town of Comox and the people that live there, and to bring an entrance out there with another road entrance just before and another one just after, I think you're just looking for trouble, in my opinion. And the traffic safety engineer agrees with that. That's what his report said, so I couldn't support that.
Okay. Councilor Pitt.
Your worship, with all due respect to what Councillor Grant says, up further on Anderton, starting with the gas station up there, there's many turns that restrict turning left across the traffic, that just allow traffic to go right, and I see it no different than that. It's again, this compromise is it requires giving from the neighbors, giving from the developers, and changing plans, but I think it addresses the safety concerns there. I went through the old Comox transportation study and saw those concerns on Anderton about crossing the street and turning against the traffic. Here, I think this might work, and it might be a win-win situation. I will say that, as one of the neighbors said, the development itself is a good idea. It's endorsed by council to try and to bring development closer to the downtown core. And I don't think the concept sounds like it was opposed at the public hearing by a lot of the neighbors. This is something that addresses the traffic safety thing, and I'm hopeful that other council members will consider it as a good compromise.
Councilor Guy.
Well, I think that what you do when you do this is you significantly change this development, and it would send the developer right back to the drawing board. He would have to start his plans all over again. Now, I don't have a hard figure as to how much money he's into for this already, but my guess is it's in the $60,000 to $70,000 range that you would have him redo this on. He's also going to lose at least one unit at that corner, if not two. And you still haven't addressed the traffic safety issue on Anderton. I know you're trying to do the best thing for everybody, and you're trying to keep everybody happy, but at the end of the day, the traffic report said that's not a safe place to put traffic out onto, and you're still not addressing that.
Right. Any further? Yes, go ahead, Councilor Fletcher.
Well, I guess what's piquing my interest here is that I'm not certain that the traffic study considered a right-in, a right-out. And if staff has information that I've missed on that, that'd be great. So I think it warrants some merit having a look at. This is also the area that I believe we've designated for construction access that we've talked about. So, and the other piece that's coming to mind is that it would act like a driveway in essence. So I think that's of interest to me.
Councilor Swift, if you have any comments.
Well, I guess I feel that we need to rely on our experts, and our experts clearly indicated more access onto Anderton was not desirable. I understand the idea of the right-in, right-out only, but I don't like the location up at the top there. So I think that I'm sufficiently happy with the answers that our engineers have come up with and the professionals, and I rely on their judgment to guide us in this.
Right, maybe at this juncture, if there's any comments on the right-in, right-out pros and cons, I guess, from the staff perspective, CAO, is there any input that you can provide us? Are there instances where that's occurred or not occurred?
I would ask for any input from Shelley Ashfield, the engineer at this time.
Right.
Thank you, Your Worship. Right in, right out definitely assists in the conflict. If you have a full movement and access or a driveway location, you have about 9 conflict zones. If you reduce it down to right in and right out only, you're down to about 2. But the difficulty with that is ensuring that they follow the traffic rules and bylaws, and people will continue to turn left at those functions, so it's increasing more of safety. Anytime that you're going to have an impact or decrease the function or capacity of the Anderton Road, any type of interruption where people could see a potential delay, they'll try to avoid that and then potentially take shortcuts and going through local neighborhood roads as well, so have an impact on the safety of potentially of our local roads as well. So if it's not designed properly, you could be looking at it if they're violating what the traffic rules are, then you're conflict zones are not going to be limited to just 2, maybe up to 9 as well.
So you're saying there is potential for traffic to use that as a shortcut potentially?
It could, if it's going to be connected into Wallace, it could be used as a shortcut if they see an interruption there that they want to just get to point A to point B. And also, which we kind of see happens on Cook, they come down and they're just trying to get to, they want to avoid the lights, they'll cut through Cook. So it's inevitable that it would happen, any type of disruption that could happen there. But the other thing is ensuring that they're going to keep to the right in and right out only, so that that design needs to be properly designed with the proper islands, what impact that right in, right out will have on Buena Vista and all the other intersections. That hasn't been looked at all, so I'm not sure.
Okay. And from the planning department's perspective on this, I know it's not so much the traffic safety issue as the density and form and character of it. I take it putting a right in, right out there would change the configuration of the development. It would have an impact on perhaps even the pedestrian walkway.
The right in, right out with the vehicle access, you would get the driveway access close to where pedestrian exit would be on the town property. So it would be less than ideal to have them both coming out at the same point on the road itself.
And putting an entrance exit right in, right out there would affect, I assume, we don't have the actual layout of the units in this package, but would affect the number of units perhaps?
I would assume that it would affect, decrease the lot yield between, if the present configuration were just modified, decrease the lot yield by a minimum of 2.
Okay.
Yes, especially if you want to still have the connection into Wallace. The existing one, you definitely lose 2.
All right, further discussion at this point, Councilor Kim.
I'd just like to say, I've got faith in the engineering department that for right in, right outs, it's worked successfully up further in Anderton, as I alluded to earlier. I've got faith in the planners that they could, the developers, that they could do something that might work. And in fact, having that right in, right out on Anderton would encourage people quicker to go down to our downtown core, which we're trying to support on Comox Avenue down that way. I think it could be a win-win, and certainly would just decrease traffic on Wallace Avenue, and I think it deserves a look at. And I realize it's giving by all parties. Everybody's not going to get what they want, but it's a viable alternative.
Yeah, I just want to clarify your treatment of Wallace, or your perception how Wallace should be treated. If you got the right in there, how would you see Wallace being utilized for this development?
Well, it's another entrance exit, but it would be a secondary entrance exit, I think, by residents, because most of them would use the Anderton exit because of the quick access to places, to Courtney or to Comox.
So you're talking about both exit and entrance at all zones? Okay, just want to clear that up.
Yeah, so I would just refer to our report on page 23, one right at the bottom. It says Wallace Avenue is recommended as the safest of the 2 access options. Anderton is an arterial road, primary function of which is to move high volumes of traffic through high volumes through traffic. Each additional access point to the arterial road introduces an additional conflict area which decreases the safety of the arterial road. That's right in our report. That's saying don't do what you're doing. The reason why you see those higher up is because they have no other exit point off of Anderton Road. That's the only reason that they're allowed. It's not because it's a safe alternative, it's because they have no other access.
Councillor Grant, I'd agree with you if in this case, it would eliminate turning left on Anderton, crossing the road. That would be a traffic safety concern for sure. This is keeping it similar to what it already is on the going up Anderton.
Well, that's not what our
All
report
right,
says.
well, I think the planner had his hand up there.
Just in terms of looking at the present configuration a little more, I'd say that you'd be utilizing the present configuration if the right in, right out would occur there. They'd use 1 unit and possibly a second one, depending on how close they want the units to the road, because the side yards are currently around 5
Councillor Swift?
Well, I just have real concerns. I really think it would be a hazard. As much as right in, right out would be what you would be going for, you're going to have those people that come up Anderton and turn left and are trying to come out of the development and also want to cross over and turn left. So I think it really does create more of a hazard there.
All right. I'll just say at this particular juncture, I understand what Councillor McKinnon's trying to do here. I do have the concerns, as Councillor Swift just mentioned, that it would result in issues of people not following the rules. It sometimes happens. And in terms of what happens currently in Anderton in the commercial spaces, I've seen people abuse those traffic rules on a regular basis. And certainly there's a higher volume of traffic into those commercial operations than there would be in a townhouse complex. When we first moved here, we lived in a townhouse complex of 40 units. And the traffic movements in and out of that, you would think, would be significant. But generally speaking, if one was coming or going from that at any given point in time, it was very unusual to see another car moving at that time. And I'm sure there'll be times when there'll be more than one car moving, but to say that there's going to be 60 cars coming and going all at once, I think is not likely. And I do understand and sympathize the concerns of the Wallace and Gladstone residents, but those are public streets. It's not a cul-de-sac per se. It hasn't been designated as such, and it provides a point of access through this, from this development through to other roads. And certainly the other concerns we've heard relate primarily to infrastructure, which I think we're going to be addressing as we go forward, not only with looking at the parking around the Avenue restaurant, but also the roundabouts at Rodello and ultimately at other places along Comox Avenue. Anderton is one of our main arterials, and of course there's historical reasons for lots of access points on it further up, but at this particular intersection, I'd hate to see another point of access egress or anywhere near it, because I think it would just encourage people to do rat runs and may encourage people to do things that they wouldn't be allowed to do by the signage. So at this point, I don't see it as, although it might be a compromise, I think we'd be compromising essentially the recommendations that our traffic engineer and our own staff have given us. So I'm not willing to compromise on the issue of safety for the sake of obviously inconvenience to the neighbors that live in the Wallace area, but I think over time that will balance out.
Well, and I also believe that if we go to one of the two parking options, and the B option seems to be the one, that gives them their parking back. I actually understand where Mr. Fielder's coming from. In his position, jockeying cars in and out of his driveway would not be good. I'm not 100% sure, but he probably needs a flat surface for his lift to work. So I can understand his concern of wanting street parking, and I think that if we did that with option B, I think that can address that concern that they have. They've also had street parking all this time, so to take it away, I think would be, I understand where they're coming from on that. So.
All right, anything further to add to the discussion, Councillor Fletcher?
Just not sure if this is the time and place. Under the outstanding items, page 23.6, 383, it's in bold. It's a discussion about the construction access.
Yes.
That area. What concerns me about this is it says, at the sole discretion of the municipal engineer, if a temporary construction vehicle access to the property. So, an if doesn't give me certainty that this will occur. I'm wondering when a temporary construction access to the property can be safely established.
Well, I guess I'd turn it over to our staff, and perhaps the municipal engineer can comment on that. I think we heard about that in a previous meeting, and so we maybe need a refresher on it.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. I think the if was just when that traffic management plan will come to me, that I ensure that it's going to be safe. We're probably looking at phasing and how that's all going to play out. And when that access off of Anderton could happen in regards to the phasing. Obviously, we would maximize as much construction activity that we can come off of Anderton, so we can minimize any more traffic use on walls as much as possible, especially the construction aspect of it. So I think that was just, if it could be proven to me that it could be provided in a safe manner, then it would be approved.
Yeah, that's the way I read it, is if safety can be ensured. And we always have to be wary of that. We don't want to create something that's unsafe. It would have to be flagged and staffed by the traffic control personnel, so that's why there's an if in there. We wouldn't do something that was unsafe.
So, just further, I think it's going to have to be made safe. I mean, the alternative, if the trucks are going to come in on Wallace, is that safe? I mean, I would rather know that that's where the majority of the construction vehicles will come in and out, and we will ensure that it's safe.
I guess, again, council directed on that at the discretion of the engineer, based on the comments we've heard here today and at previous meetings, that there would be procedures to follow. But we have to leave it to our engineer, who's going to follow best practices in consultation with the developer to make it as safe as possible for construction vehicles to have access there. I don't think that's anything new. I think that if construction access was going through Wallace, there would still have to be flaggers and the like there to ensure safety. So that's not going to change, but council did recognize, and Councillor Tom Granite brought that forward, that during construction, which is obviously the time when heavier vehicles are there, that we'll do whatever we can to make sure that it doesn't go down Wallace, to lessen the inconvenience that those residents are going to experience during the build-out of this project. And as phasing goes through, then there may be times when construction vehicles may have to go through walls because there's no more room along Anderson. Planner.
Well, it was directed otherwise by council. My interpretation of that clause is that when we put together the 219 covenant, it would state that as determined by the municipal engineer, access will be, construction access will occur from Anderton in a safe manner. So the intent, if I understand it correctly, is that on the covenant, it would be a requirement. The developer would not have the option of saying no. It would be a matter of, you must give us a plan that shows it's safe, and if there's reasonable things that the municipal engineer requires to make it safe, that be done. And we would also leave sufficient room and discretion for the municipal engineer so that we could work with the phasing and the construction timeline of the applicant to try and have that open for the longest amount of time that is reasonable, because it is, it's going to be fourplex in its way. So it depends on how they do their site access, and we want to have that flexibility. But that's how I would interpret that.
So it is a requirement on the covenant, yes.
There's more confidence there, thank you.
Okay. Councillor McKinnon.
I'd like to go on record, just say three last points about it, is that in regards to right-in, right-out, a properly engineered or constructed right-in, right-out, you can't turn left off it. And I've seen those in Vancouver, and it just doesn't just discourage it. And the last thing we want is to have a traffic safety nightmare on Anderton. But if I hadn't believed that you could properly construct them, I wouldn't have suggested it. I also, secondly, the suggestion that a shortcut through a development, that people would take that as a shortcut to get into Courtenay, I don't believe that would happen. It's different than shortcut through a neighborhood street, but a shortcut cutting through a development and through Wallace over to Comox Avenue, I don't think that would happen. And finally, just that this is all with good intentions. We're thinking of what's best for not just the neighborhood, but for the town. I agree with Councillor Grant there, and looking at options and compromises is important to do that. And we'd like to see what's best for the long term and the short term. And I think two entrances would be better for safety all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and I think, yes, everyone's heart is in the right place here, trying to do what's best for the community at large, having considered the various competing interests here, and certainly that's our task at any given juncture. So, are you ready for the question? Is the next question? Yes.
I have concern about one of the other outstanding items. Is this the time?
Yes.
Okay, and it's on page 23.7. And it's the provision of a minimum of 10% of the dwelling units with 220-volt connections in covered
Ah, yes.
parking areas. And when I've been reading these, I imagined that these charging stations would be out in the public areas, accessible to anybody who required them. But having talked to our planner and reading it more carefully, I discovered that they're actually attached to particular units. And knowing that there are very few electric cars, less than 1% in Canada, that are out on the road, I'm wondering if we could omit that piece. Because I think the likelihood of having a resident and an electric car being in the same place is very remote. And I don't think it makes sense. I think it's well-intentioned. I think it makes us look progressive, but I don't think it's useful.
All right, further discussion, yes?
Well, I would further to that say that, you know, these are entry-level homes that they're building here. And electric cars, I mean, I don't know what they cost, but we just bought one, and I don't think you can buy a new electric car for under about $40,000. I don't see very many people that are buying entry-level houses having a $40,000 automobile in their garage. So I would kind of concur that this is, although well-intentioned possibly, I think it's something that you're going to put into these houses and no one's ever going to use.
Just ask the planner, is it necessary that they be located within particular units, or is there a possibility of including it as part of visitor parking, for example?
Yes, it would be possible to include it as part of the visitor parking stalls on site. That would, depending on their electrical layout or their lighting systems, it would probably require additional conduit.
So could we, for example, like they've done at the Visitor Information Center, have one charging station as a part of one of the visitor parking spots?
Yes, I mean, the recommendation currently is not for charging stations. The charging stations are additional connection. The recommendation is just for the 220-volt service to that point, being that the cost of retrofitting it is quite expensive as opposed to the cost of providing that service connection in the beginning. So the current wording would be that a connection, a 220-volt service be there, so similar to a dryer service, such that in the future if somebody wanted to put in a charging station, they could put in a charging station, or they could connect directly to the 220, which is a slower charge. That technology is changing, so we just limited it to the 220 service. But yes, you could say that that should be as part of the common parking areas. That 3 common parking stalls be provided with a 220 service, or you could say that, for example, 1 charging stall be provided that's able, sufficient capacity to service 3, different stalls. So you can only plug in 1 car at one time, but it could extend past just the 1 stall that's in front. So those options are available.
I mean, personally, I would like to see some allowance for that. I think that is the way of the future. And I agree there are some limitations with that, but I certainly think it's something we should be holding our new developments to at least provide something in that regard, and I think that over time will pay off. But I understand the concerns about tagging them with specific units that may or may not be used, unless they want to plug in an extra dryer or something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did speak to an electrician today, and he said it's not that expensive to, I guess that's always a relative term, what's expensive.
Well, I guess when I look at this is it's a public amenity that we're asking the developer to provide as a condition of rezoning.
Right.
Okay, so I mean, there's all sorts of other amenities that we can ask for, and we certainly have some in here, but that's an amenity that would be used by the residents of that area, whether it's within a unit or perhaps in the visitor room.
So just to clarify, we're not asking for the charging stations, we're just asking for the 220
Yeah.
thing, which that's not a huge expense, I shouldn't imagine. Okay.
All right, so we can either change that, take it out, or leave it as is. What's your pleasure? Now that we know what the ramifications are.
Well, I've always wanted 2 dryers in my house. I say we leave it in.
Okay, well, unless there's somebody wishing to make a motion to take it out and get it seconded and passed, then
Well, I guess I'm happy leaving it, but it just doesn't seem to make a huge amount of sense to me this time.
I'll wait till gas gets $2 a liter.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we were actually having to put the charging units in itself, and I didn't agree with that. But if it's just, it's not worth it.
All right, so anything further? So we are at third reading for this development. Lots of good discussion around a number of issues here, and in particular, thank you for Councillor McKinnon bringing that forward on the write-in, write-out option. So as I said earlier, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of third reading? Those opposed? One opposed. Third reading of the rezoning bylaw, and now we need third reading of the phase development.
Move.
Second?
Any discussion on the phase development? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. One opposed.
Now, is this a appropriate time to bring up the option B parking, or have we covered that off?
We have a plan.
Okay? so-
CAO, is this the appropriate time?
Councillor Grant may wish to make the following motion. That staff be directed to amend the scope of works for the Wallace Avenue upgrade to include on-street parking, with the additional cost to be found from sources within the proposed 2014-2018 financial plan.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Fletcher?
So to be real clear, there will be no restrictions to the residents for parking on the street.
Councillor Grant?
Well, if you read option B, I believe that there would be parking on the lower side of the street. There would not be parking on the upper side of the street, although it would have the rolled curve so they could actually park on their own property off the street. So in actual fact, you would get parking on both sides of the street.
If they chose to park on their
If they
grass
want
or
to park on their
flower beds or
whatever they've got there.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially this talks about increasing the width from, was it 6.6 meters to 9? And providing a wider road than currently is there, but to allow for parking to do that. We need this space to do the parking on one side of it. Anything further on that? So that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, staff, for bringing that forward.
Thank you for that motion that I so
All right, that concludes our discussions regarding 335 Anderson. It's at third reading, and will be brought back at a later date for adoption once certain conditions have been met. All right, so the Regional District Board meeting minutes we have for receipt. The board meeting on February 25th, the Hospital Board meeting of March 6th, and the Strathcona Solid Waste Management Board meeting on March 6th.
Move.
Seconded, all three. Any items to discuss? No, seeing none, all those in favor? The bylaws, we do have new business, one item under new business, which is the planner's report regarding the I-1.1 light industrial zone in the city of Shamrock Place. And staff are asking for direction to hold a meeting with the owners and tenants of those lands regarding potentially expanding the commercial uses permitted currently on those lands.
I would move that.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Relatively self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Report for Councillor.
I just wanted to know, what do you anticipate will be the timeline of the, I know you outlined different meetings and so on, what would the timeline be for the consultations and meetings with this group?
For the initial consultation, we can do that before June. We have on our timelines, we have the Beaufort Avenue Park property that we're trying to get up for council. So because we have a number of housekeeping bylaws that are ready to be for public hearing.
talking about doing your initial consultation before June,
Yes.
and then you report back to council, and then further consultation, I would imagine, in the fall,
Yes.
and then ultimately a public hearing at some point thereafter.
Yes.
So sometime in the late fall.
I don't believe there was any particular urgency expressed by the one letter that we received,
No, I just heard it.
so we'll see where that goes. Thank you for that. Anything further on that? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And items of correspondence are none. Reports from members of council. Councilor Price,
Yes,
you're back.
You might as well participate, we're in something here.
so I did attend the open house for the proposed park on Beaufort Avenue. Also a cycling task force meeting. I did go to the ethnic fusion, which was very good, and I was asked if I would bring greetings from the town, which I was happy to do. We had a guides council meeting here the other week with the 3 women on council and a whole bunch of guides. That was great. And then I was at St. Joe's Auxiliary 100-year celebration.
Councilor Swift.
I also attended the Global Fusion Fest. Easy for me to say. And it was really interesting to see just different people in their ethnic dress and so on, and it was interesting to see how many different groups there were. So that was kind of a fun day. I attended a meeting with Carson Shanks from the Vista Housing Society to hear more about his project. I attended the open house regarding the Beaufort property. It was, I thought it was a really good format, and it gave some opportunity to speak to people and hear their concerns in a less formal manner. I thought that was useful. I attended the Girl Guides night here, and that was fun. And the ladies' auxiliary tea at the hospital last Friday.
Councilor Fletcher.
Since we last met, I too attended the open house for 1988 Beaufort Avenue. Following that, I attended the Strathcona Regional Solid Waste Management and the Regional Hospital Board meeting, which was held on March 6th. March 10th, we hosted the Girl Guides here in council chambers. March 11th, attended the Regional District Sports Commission and Committee of the Whole. March 12th, I met on site with President Shanks, the developer of the Housing Society. Attended committee hall that day and the public hearing for 335 Anderson. Last Friday, with the regional district, attended a Comox First Nations community forum. At that time, Comox presented their comprehensive community plan, somewhat similar to our official community plan, but more comprehensive in that way. And I'd really encourage them to come around and share it with them.
So which group is that again?
Comox First Nations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So really excellent plan that they're working on. They'll be sharing it with the community. As well, that day I attended the St. Joseph's Auxiliary 100th Anniversary Tea, and yesterday attended the Regional District Board.
All right, Councilor McKinney.
Yes, I also met with Carson Shanks. I was at the open house for the property. I attended a YANA event last week in Comox at Cole Rob Road. I went to the Global Fusion Fest along with some other councillors at the Billboard. On the 11th, Mayor Ives and I attended the Community Justice Center reception and speech by Judge Green from Saskatchewan regarding restorative justice. Attended the public hearing last Wednesday, of course. Friday the 14th, I attended Andy Iverson, Comox First Nations, Andy Iverson's art show opening at the Comox Valley Art Gallery. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilor Grant.
And I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting for the regional district in place of Tom, and also the regular regional district meeting and the rec commission meeting. I met with Carson Shanks as well, he's getting around, that guy, and the open house for Beaufort was also there.
Right, thanks. I attended the open house regarding Beaufort, dinner and lecture for Judge Ross Green. I think Councilor McKinney was at that as well for restorative justice last week. The 100th anniversary tea, great event to recognize 100 years of service to the community. Although I was a little perplexed when they said that there was a Mrs. Fletcher involved at the very beginning, so I'm sure it wasn't our Councillor Fletcher, but maybe a distant relative. Youth Firefighter Camp is underway. I dropped in last night, over 30 students there from 4 high schools, and you may think we don't have 4, but actually do. École Coeur d'Alene does have students that are in senior grades, so they had students from there as well as the 3 high schools. And they're running full tilt till Friday at about noon. And if anyone wants to drop in, I think we've got scheduled different activities and events, and they're keeping them running, and great experience. Last night, of course, is their fire practice night, so all the firefighters were out to help out, and a lot of work goes into that, not only by the firefighters, but sponsorship from the community. And just a reminder to council, there's an opportunity to be firefighter for half a day coming up on Saturday, March 29th, and invitations have been extended to members of council as well as other councils in the area, as well as school boards and so on. That's from Saturday morning, 8:30 to 12:30. So we're promised in a fast-paced activity and maybe even a chance to put out a fire. So there you go. We're good at doing that, right? So that's my report. So no late items. Any questions for the media member here at this time? Okay. Any members of the questions? Public here this time? No, seeing none, no camera meeting, so motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
In favor?